Awesome. All right. Thanks everyone for being here today. I'm going to talk about a community project that we started after the last workshop. It's been sort of like starting over the past few months, but we've really actively started working on it after the past workshop. So to give you a bit of context about it, we run a lot of workshops like these, like this series of workshop runs every 6 to 8 weeks roughly. And we also do weekly journal club sessions. I've been posting links to these in the chat. I will do it at the end of the session too. And what we realized was that there are so many interesting discussions that happen in these that are not necessarily available for other people to use. And we don't necessarily want to record a lot of these sessions because we want people to actually come into these sessions and have a discussion with us. But it would be interesting to, have some notes from these sessions and publish them. And with recent advances, we realized that we could transcribe these meetings that we do, then use large language models to, summarize these and put them and start collecting them into an open book. And the idea of an open book is a place where anybody can contribute to it. We will be our community will be the main contributors, but anybody who wants to add anything to it can do that. It is essentially a GitHub repo with all of the notes from the events and sessions that we run. And we started doing that. There are a lot of things in these open books, in this open book that we've been creating. You can see, the link again is in the chat. You can take a look at it. But, as we kept doing that, we realized two problems. Problem one was, well, now who wants to sit down and read this whole thing? Because, it is growing really fast because there is so much interesting content out there, and we are reviewing and discussing these and, keep adding to this open book. But at the same time, the open book is also not everything we want to cover. So we ran into this, knowledge ops problem that I kept talking about, in these workshops previously. And then we thought, what if you could talk to this book and similar resources about any question you have, any problem that you have? And can we even go further and turn this into a hive mind? Because, other communities are doing something similar. What if we had something like a Slack app that would sit into, the Slacks of all of these communities, Discords of all these communities, any other tool they use, and essentially knowledge from all of these different communities, get gathered, augmented with the knowledge from the internet, and helps people find answers to all the questions they have. So what I'm presenting today is recapping knowledge ops, like why do we care about this problem at all? And then I'm going to get into details of the project itself. Before I start, I'm going to quickly put some links in the chat so that you can look at them as I go. There will be a link to the open book that contains all of what I just described, as well as a few other links. So and especially we want people to start contributing to this project, both the open book side as well as the Slack app and the live book side. So if you want to participate, either if you want to contribute to this open source project, either reach out to me on LinkedIn or Slack. Links to both of those are in the chat. So let me get started. So this presentation is an update on our live LLM live book project. As I described quickly, it is a book that is writing itself based on the knowledge that is coming out of sessions like this that we run. And then you don't have to read it. You can just talk to it. So let's take a step back and talk a little about the topic of knowledge ops that I spoke about in the past two workshops. So knowledge ops is this, continuation of DevOps and ML ops that now is getting to the point where we can automate and augment our knowledge processes. And I talked about this. There's the note and recordings from those talks. You can go back to look at them. But I want to do a quick recap to sort of put what I'm about to show you in terms of the open source project in the context of this knowledge ops. So, what we're really trying to do here is to create this movement, and a lot of people are, and we are contributing to creating this movement around building these knowledge ops tools and applications. So just to remind you, what I mean by knowledge ops is management and optimization of knowledge assets and processes. So as I described, like notes from the meetings that we have, code from the internet, different types of tools that you use, documentation of these tools. Now, all of these are information that is necessary for you to do your work, most of you at least. And accessing this information needs to be more efficient than what we're used to, and a lot of generative tools are allowing us to do that. And one of the very important things that this causes is improving our ability to communicate, collaborate, and do projects. In the Slack app, I will show you later, for example, that the way we are designing the Slack app in the open source project is a multiplayer scenario where multiple people can start talking to each other about a problem in a thread, and then the Slack app can be called to fetch some relevant information or to answer a question that was asked in the thread and me and my collaborators don't know. So the purpose of the Slack app is really enhancing our ability to communicate and collaborate and build, right? So, and I put all of these under the umbrella of knowledge ops. So if I want to give a slightly more formal definition, as I said, knowledge ops is the continuation of DevOps that later became model ops in areas that it was relevant. And now it is becoming knowledge ops. And this trend is shifting left further and further into areas that are more knowledge heavy and manual. So, a lot of you have seen this. I've shown it before. But, in model ops, we are used to, this double infinity. With knowledge ops, we're adding this extra layer where the information can be interpreted, explored, and negotiated for a task that we're trying to do using tools, eventually automated, but at least in short term in a significantly augmented way. And as I, again, talked about before, in order to have knowledge ops, we need language skills, reasoning skills, and tool skills. A few of the talks this morning showed examples of how these can be achieved using large language models. But, with seeing more and more work in that space, what I'm talking about is becoming more and more plausible. And, I also spoke about, information seeking agents, which is the concept that we are using as we are building this live book and the corresponding Slack app. And, again, like a few of the presentations this morning, especially Think GPT talked about it. Pandas AI also touched on it. But the idea is that, if you have a question, you should be able to just grab your book, your phone and ask that question. And the system should be able to generate some sub-questions, sub-tasks about this question, prioritize these tasks, execute them by fetching information from a few different tools where the information might exist, and then reflect on the information that it has gathered, potentially ask you follow-up questions and or provide an answer to you. So this is like a super high-level version of how systems like this would work. This is on the reading and interacting with information side, but you could also imagine that if your task is to add chapters to a book that is being written on its own, again, the same sort of feedback loop is going to happen. I'm going through these very quickly. There's like a full talk about them on the open book that you can go back and check out. So let's more specifically talk about the agent that we're creating. We call it Sherpa. Sherpa is motivated by shepherds that live in Tibet, and they help people climb Mount Everest. And the idea of Sherpa, our assistant or thinking companion, is that it will help you, solve and tackle complex problems. The idea of it is not to replace you, because Sherpas don't climb Everest on your behalf. They help you do that. So that's exactly what Sherpa tries to do as well. So as I said, I haven't written any code. Well, I've written some code, but most of the code written for this project or conceptual investigation is done by this group of awesome people. Several of them are officially Aggregate Intellect folks, but there are also several people from the community who have contributed. Make sure you message them and say thank you for building this awesome tool, or tag them on social media if this project sounds interesting to you. But as you can see at the bottom right, we're looking for you as well, because you can join us and help building the next generations of Sherpa. But what is Sherpa concretely? Let's take a look at that. So as I described at the beginning, this whole thing started when we realized that we have a lot of event transcripts, like workshops like this, and we wanted to make these available as notes to everybody else. So I started, playing around in a Jupyter notebook and a Colab notebook with ways to summarize this. And, then I would do a lot of prompts and then manually put them together, structure them, and then do a PR into GitHub book that I described. And, that's how the LLM Open Book came to be. So over the past couple of months, a few of the folks that I showed in the previous slide grabbed that notebook, improved it, enhanced it, made it more automated, refactored it so that we can put it up on our server, et cetera, et cetera. So now, very soon we will be able to have, as soon as this transcript is ready, we're just going to drop it into a bucket. The system is going to pick it up, summarize it in a structured way. So it is not just, here's a paragraph of summary. It is actually a structured summary of the notes. And as Amir pointed out, of course, transcriptions are usually poorly done, so it is hard to read them, but the summary is much easier to read, and it becomes part of the open book. So, but as I said, just reading a lot of text I don't like it. I don't know if you do. That's your thing, but I don't like it. So along the way, some of the challenges that we had to tackle and still have to tackle are, is the summary that is being generated accurate? Is it missing anything important? As I said, we want this to be structured. So is it consistent? Like, is all the information that is relevant actually presented in the different sections consistently? And is it saying anything interesting, or is it, just saying a bunch of generic things, right? So we have made some progress on these, but there's a lot of work that we still have to do. So if you are interested, excited about, these kind of things, and you've played around with LLMs or you want to play around with LLMs, definitely reach out. We need help, getting this better. We're making progress, but we can always use more eyes and brains and typing hands. So that's one side of it. That's where things started. But again, I wasn't a huge fan of reading myself. I prefer to ask my questions. And that's where the second part of this project came. So the idea of the second part of the project is to grab a memory, index the live book, as well as a bunch of other things. Like right now, we are indexing LangChain documentations, we are indexing Llama index documentation, some history from our Slack channel. And, we are calling, this is in development, but will be available soon. We will be calling GitHub API, the archive API, and other types of places that we can scrape or call APIs to get information that is relevant to our community and the type of topics that exist around LLMs and how to use them. Even like on, on the ethics and business side of things as well, things that are not like just writing code. So we want to start collecting as much knowledge as possible about and around LLMs, so that anybody who wants to build with LLMs or collaborate with others can just come to this resource, ask questions, and get things going. So everything will be indexed, and this is another part that we need help. So anybody who is familiar with data engineering, optimizing data engineering pipelines can come in and start helping us add more resources to this. But the idea is that a lot of information will be indexed in this memory. And then we use a React framework. For those who are less familiar, React is a reasoning and action planning framework. Essentially, the user might ask a question. The React framework will interpret this question and sort of like comes up with a bunch of thoughts and tasks that it has to do. And then it uses different types of information like Google search as well as this available memory to iteratively get closer and finally provide an answer to that question. The same framework could also be used to improve writing the LLM book eventually, because we don't necessarily want all the information from the transcripts to be only available in the book. We want it to be more general. So this arrow that goes from React to the summarizer will also need to be built at some point. But that's the general idea. Like, can we start creating this knowledge base of all the information and make it available to our community that lives on a Slack to use this information to figure out how they can build things. And as I said, it is inside a Slack purposefully so that it is a multiplayer scenario. So that if Sherpa is answering a question incorrectly or incomplete or is not answering any sort of nuance, any other community member can come in and add more nuances and details. And then the goal is to also start, having this Slack app in other communities so that they can enjoy this, but also, the knowledge base can extend to what those communities talk about and learn and like, and sort of like create this hive mind of, all the knowledge that exists around LLMs that is available to all of these different communities. So some of the tasks that we are going to be working on, that again, I strongly invite you to join us and help doing these, like all of these open source, is adding more sources of knowledge. We have some specific ideas about what these are, but you're always looking for other ideas. We want to make this as broadly interesting as possible. Consistency of the answers and information in the live book is a little challenging. So some ideas around self-reflection that we've heard about a couple of times today are what we're thinking about, next steps that need to be added. But we also have started thinking about graph-based ways to ensure consistency. Accuracy is always a big problem in these kind of systems. So working on improving our prompts and or system designs to ensure the level of detail that is necessary to be accurate about any piece of information will be very important. As I said, the purpose of this is facilitating communication and collaboration. So the multiplayer aspect is very important. We have a relatively basic version of this already working just by the mercy of the Slack being a multiplayer environment. But we want to start thinking about what are the other nuances that make a system like this useful for anybody who wants to collaborate, right? And of course, everybody, and I emphasized this a few times during other talks, using a smaller LLMs are, generally speaking, a good idea. So we want to at some point start thinking about, what are the ecosystem of models that we have to put together to make this system more efficient. So thinking about a smaller large language models will be very, very interesting. So if any of these get you excited, please reach out and we can talk about them. If you're very new to all of these and you're like, oh my God, what are you talking about? Still, you can reach out. I'm sure there are, smaller tasks that we can get you started. As simple as even like contributing to documentation and sandboxes we are creating will be super helpful. So what's the roadmap for this and what is going to happen? So we are in early July right now. Our next workshop is going to be mid-August. By that time, the goal is to do an alpha release in ACE community. The link to it is in the chat. If you scroll up a bit, you will see that. After that, the goal is to, the workshop after that will be end of September. And by then, we want this live book to be integrated into 3 communities. 2 communities, we are already in conversation with them, so we can accommodate 1 more community. So if you run a community and you want this Slack app and live book integrated, reach out and we can discuss it. And hopefully by the end of the year, we will have the general availability of the hive mind we want to create that will help people, more effectively activate their knowledge and build together. There are a lot of cool features that we will add from the commercial side of Aggregate Intellect as well. But the majority of what I described will be available for free and or at the cost for community organizers. But for the users, it will be definitely free. It is an open source project. You contribute to it, and we host it. But definitely reach out if you want to collaborate on this, if you want to partner, if you have any interesting ideas about how this can be done better for you. Yeah, and I repeated this a few times, so I'm not going to say it again. So I'm going to wrap up by a call to action. So obviously the big call to action is reach out if you want to collaborate with us on this project. We do help companies use LLM in their business and products. So if it is you, if your company is interested in these kind of implementations on your internal company data, the way I wave my hand and talk about it is if you want ChatGPT on your company data and you're trying to figure out how to do that, reach out. Happy to do a quick discovery call with you and point you in the right direction or otherwise help you with implementation. For those of you who don't know, we have a community of about 5,000 AI practitioners and researchers globally. And usually, after an initial engagement to, sort out your idea into a technical problem, we usually just subcontract it to a community member to implement it for you. So we have access to a lot of talent that can work on interesting projects for what you're trying to build. And if you're interested, again, my name, reach out on any platform, really. With that note, I'm going to wrap up and answer any questions. So again, if you want to join our live book project, please message me on LinkedIn or Slack or email or send a pigeon, whatever. I respond to everything.